Nathan Drake is one of the most undeniably iconic and indisputably cool characters in the history of video games. So why on earth did Sony, PlayStation and Naughty Dog kill the character off? Obviously, Uncharted 4 did not literally kill Nathan Drake, but close to a decade after his last major outing and with no signs of any direct follow-up on the horizon, it's clear that the legendary adventurer is no longer the untouchable PlayStation mascot that he used to be, and the reasons why don't make a lot of sense. I think that Uncharted 4 is a very good game, in many varied ways. And I also think that the ending they gave to Nathan Drake was reasonably well executed. But I don't understand why they would want to definitively conclude the story of a character with such proven evergreen value. I'd like to believe that the decision to end the Uncharted story was rooted in a sincere desire to give the series a happy ending at the height of its popularity. But it's not impossible that it emerged from a growing apathy towards the character instead. Because even though there are several video game characters who have arguably overstayed their welcome, I don't think that Nathan Drake ever did. And in the right hands, I don't think he would have for quite some time. Because the character is designed to last across countless stories. So what exactly allowed Nathan Drake to become such an iconic character? And how and why did they throw that all away by killing him off?
I can't leave you alone for a minute, can I?
I had everything under control until they blew up the boat.
Nathan Drake is not a particularly complicated or enigmatic character. And in the Uncharted context, I think that's a very good thing. Like Master Chief or James Bond, he is not a hero who needs to go through deep emotional turmoil and transformative spiritual experiences in every outing. He is built to function as a likable and sympathetic protagonist, whose repeated journeys can follow the same rough template without quickly becoming repetitive. He was not, as far as I'm concerned, a character who had a clear-cut shelf life. Until he was given one in Uncharted 4, when they decided to actively acknowledge his aging body and mind and make it part of the story. Across all manner of stories, one thing that consistently prevents characters from being timeless is the recognition of passing time, because it suggests an inherent degradation of the core premise. Just like calling James Bond a relic betrays the innate enjoyability of his repeated story, making Nathan Drake a graying, tired adventurer close to retirement suggests to the player that there is a downward slope, and it recontextualizes his other adventures too. Throughout the first 3 Uncharted games, the back and forth interpersonal conflicts and evolving relationships add a lot of nice colour and continuity, but I don't think they're suggestive of a central emotional arc for Nathan Drake. His relationship with Elena is turbulent enough that he repeatedly finds the opportunity to ruin and fix things. And as much as I like Elena, the key thing to note is that an Uncharted story could work without her, just like Indiana Jones can work without Marion. Each game and each story functions independently of the others, without needing too much establishing context, and they all offer a similar, consistently effective narrative arc. Nathan Drake's adventures are not dramatically differentiated by his evolution as a character. They're defined by their unique winding plots and exotic locales. Across dozens of films and stories, James Bond's arc never loses the fundamental entertainment value of its central premise. The suave, sophisticated super spy becoming a ruthless soldier in order to defeat evil. And Nathan Drake has his own unique, repeatable arc just like that. For the benefit of driving these action-focused plots, Nathan Drake simply isn't a hero with complicated unconscious desires and motivations. He is very clear about who he is and what he wants on the surface. The pattern of the classic Uncharted story is driven by his unrelenting quest to find some kind of hidden treasure, and each journey is resolved by the familiar revelation of his inherently good nature. When it becomes clear that saving lives and defeating evil is ultimately more important to him than bringing home piles of gold. And this story can work again and again because at its core it insists on giving the audience a fun and memorable adventure. New villains, new treasures and new settings define each unique mystery, and it doesn't matter that the player essentially knows how it's all going to pan out, because the joy of the experience is in the process, and in spending time with Nathan Drake himself too. He is a classically charming, physically adept and ambitious ruffian who is well acted and usually well written with sincerity and heart, which makes him very easy to love. And for all these reasons, there shouldn't have been any sort of tangible limit on the number of Uncharted stories they could tell before boring the audience to death. So long as they abided by the principles of Nathan Drake's character and the familiar shape of his story, they could have tried limitless new things with the series and made many more brilliant experiences. But instead, they basically killed him off.
Yeah, well, you know, as thrilling as the next adventure might be, in the end, I always left with that same feeling. And sometimes you just gotta choose what you're gonna keep and what you're gonna let go.
These days, icons of film, TV, and video games rarely die when they're given a proper send-off in the way their creators originally intended. Instead, usually one of two things happens. Either the inherent popularity of a character is weaponized to produce as much merchandise or tangentially related content as possible until the fanbase grows sick of it and stops handing over their money, or a character is aggressively deconstructed by a new creative team to build a foundation for a franchise reboot that never materializes. Nathan Drake, then, is lucky at least that he was given a relatively merciful send-off. His final adventure in Uncharted 4, searching for Henry Avery's lost pirate treasure, is a mostly brilliant, action-packed journey just like his previous outings, even if it is framed as the last exciting adventure of an aging explorer. After eventually finding the pirate treasure, the story ends when Nate defeats his former partner in crime, Rafe, and rescues his brother, Sam, while leaving the hoard of gold behind, fulfilling the requirements of the Uncharted story by revealing his priorities are in the right place once again. Then, while Sam and Nate's mentor, Sully, head off on their own new adventures, Nate himself ends up returning home and buying the salvage company where he's been working to settle into a more normal life. And then, sometime later, we play through a short epilogue as Nate and Elena's daughter, Cassie, as she starts out on her own adventuring career. Obviously then, again, Uncharted 4 didn't literally kill Nathan Drake, and for the most part, it keeps his legacy intact. But it definitely does conclude his story in a pretty definitive way, such that they might as well have killed him. The game sets up Nadine and Chloe to go off on their own adventures. It gives Sam and Sully the premise for some buddy comedy heist activities, and it offers an unambiguous passing of the baton moment from Nathan Drake to his daughter. And if all of that wasn't enough to prove that they were done with Nate's story, the fact that the spin-off DLC was focused entirely on Chloe Fraser and Nadine Ross certainly was. And while The Lost Legacy was definitely very good in its own right, Nathan Drake's absence was also very obvious, and I'm not sure that it was a particularly successful mission statement for the future of the franchise overall. While it doesn't seem likely that they'll return to Nadine and Chloe or give Cassie or Sam their own game anytime soon, it's clear that these were the options that Naughty Dog wanted to explore in the franchise's future instead of another Nate story. And to some extent, I have to admit that it was remarkably brave to end Nathan Drake's story in the way that they did. As much as I think it was an unnecessary error to cut off future possibilities by introducing an internal conflict with an unrepeatable resolution to the Uncharted story, I do still think that it was a mostly good story, well told. But when you have a character and an arc that is a proven hit, it shows a very high degree of confidence in your future storytelling potential to kill that character off. I remember thinking the same thing after watching Avengers Endgame in the cinema. It was a decent story, but it came at the cost of everything good they had built. Endgame was a fantastic conclusion to the MCU, and it ended that bigger story in a spectacular way, but then they kept making films anyway. With that in mind, then, we should be thankful at least that they haven't made another Uncharted game that undoes and cheapens this ending and everything it represents, because that would be a lot worse in many ways than no new games. Truthfully, I don't particularly want another Nathan Drake Uncharted game anymore, primarily for that reason. And this is why it's clear to me that they did effectively kill Nathan Drake, because anything that picks up where they left off would feel wrong, and any kind of reboot risks ruining all the good that they have done. I think they did a very good job of killing the character, but I don't understand why they wanted to kill him in the first place.
You're buying Jameson Marine?
We are buying Jameson Marine.
Huh. Okay. How? Why?
Whether I like it or not, and whether it makes sense or not, definitively ending the Uncharted story with a thief's end did kill the Nathan Drake that people knew and loved from the first 3 games. If they hadn't aged the character quite so much, and if they hadn't made his age and his internal struggles part of the story, then there could have still been obvious potential for his future. A version of Uncharted 4 that kept all the action and fun but lost the finality would not have been as emotionally impactful, but it would have kept Nathan Drake's story alive, and even if it took 20 years to see the next game, people would definitely be looking forward to it the whole time. To be clear though, I don't have an issue with well-written endings for long-lived characters. It's just that when a character has a reliably brilliant premise to fit within, it almost feels like giving them an ending is just an easy narrative cheat code to add some emotional weight to a story. Because coming back to the character again and again in a short period of time requires lots of big ideas and careful storycraft to keep a familiar narrative feeling fresh. I think the original 3 Uncharted games succeeded spectacularly in this way though, building upon one another without having to start development from scratch each time, in much the same way that Insomniac have iterated on their Spider-Man games without needing to take a decade between each entry, focusing instead on telling new stories and building new set pieces. Personally, I'd like to see a lot more iterative games just like that. Either way, there's every chance that in a few years' time, under new management or needing another hit, Naughty Dog could make an Uncharted 5 that brings Nathan Drake back from the dead. But it will never be quite the same again. There have been rumours swirling for a little while that some kind of remake or remaster of at least Drake's Fortune, if not all 3 of the original PS3 games, could be coming at some point. I don't think those games necessarily need polishing past the PS4 remaster collection, but I would definitely still play prettier versions, so long as they end up being basically good. Because, while a faithful, performant remaster could help bring Nathan Drake back into the public eye in a big way, a bad remaster could easily tarnish the reputation of the original games. Regardless, the longer they keep Nathan Drake out of the PlayStation spotlight, the less he will matter to the majority of players, especially when their film adaptation has failed to connect with audiences in a big way. Nowadays, Sony clearly want players to be thinking about Astrobot and Aloy, not Nathan Drake. I'm not in any position to know who at Sony, PlayStation, and Naughty Dog are specifically making the calls around these characters and their future projects, and there are almost certainly 100 factors influencing a dozen different decision makers that have all resulted in this fate for Uncharted. But I can say one thing for absolute certain. If PlayStation leadership wanted to have more Nathan Drake in the world, they could absolutely find a way to make that happen, for better or worse. But how do you feel about a world without Nathan Drake? Let me know in the comments, and please do like and subscribe if you'd like to hear me talk more stories and more games. Otherwise, I'll see you next time around.